So yesterday we were discussing about generation of this DNA profile. Now yesterday we discussed it first. What is the basis of this DNA profiling or this DNA fingerprinting? So now you know that we compare only 0.1% of the DNA because 99.9% of the DNA is identical between any two individuals. So we have to only compare 0.1%. That means we have 3 million base pairs available for comparison. But we do not compare all those 3 million base pairs. As I told you yesterday, we only target a few chromosomes. We target only 16 chromosomes. On those 16 chromosomes, there are 20 locations where we find those STRs or microsatellites. From those 20 chromosomes, we take up the DNA. We then compare those microsatellites. So, for generation of a DNA profile, we need to we need to get a DNA sample. First, we need to get a DNA sample. So how this DNA sample is obtained? If there is a crime, if there if any crime has occurred at any place, forensic scientists immediately rush to the spot of crime. There they look for any blood, any sputum, any hair follicles, any this semen. They can extract DNA from skin cells. They can extract DNA from hair follicle cells. They can extract DNA from semen. They can extract DNA from blood, right? So for obtaining DNA sample, either the DNA sample is taken from the cheek swab, or the DNA sample may be obtained from any body tissue, or the DNA sample may be obtained from the crime scene, right? DNA fingerprinting is mostly involved. It is mostly used for solving criminal cases or for solving legal disputes, right? So for that purpose, a DNA sample is to be taken. When the DNA sample has been taken, whether from a crime scene or from any person, right? This DNA sample, it is first, only first 16 chromosomes are targeted. I told you yesterday which chromosomes. Chromosome number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 7, 8, as I mentioned yesterday. Those 16 chromosomes are taken out from the nucleus of the cell. From those 16 chromosomes, the DNA is taken out. Then that DNA is cut into smaller fragments. This is our DNA sample. This DNA, it is double helical DNA. It is very large, right? This DNA, it needs to be cut into small fragments. We cannot handle this DNA in large strand, right? So we need to break this DNA into small fragments. So this cutting of DNA into small fragments by the help of restriction enzyme, we use molecular scissors. Those molecular scissors, they are restriction enzymes. Restriction enzymes are known as molecular scissors. As we cut the cloth by the help of a scissor, similarly we cut the DNA, but we don't use those tailoring scissors. We use enzymes. Those enzymes, they recognize a specific sequence on the DNA where they cut the DNA. So these enzymes, which are used for cutting the DNA at specific sequences, these enzymes are known as restriction enzymes, or we call them as molecular scissors. They are most appropriately known as restriction endonucleases. Endonucleases, right? So restriction endonucleases are mostly used for cutting this DNA into small fragments. Where from these restriction enzymes are obtained? These restriction enzymes, they are obtained from the bacteria. Bacteria naturally produce these restriction enzymes for neutralizing the attack of viruses. You know, when a bacterium is infected by a virus, the virus inserts its own genome into the bacterium. That genome destroys the DNA of bacteria. In order to protect itself from the attack of virus, bacteria have evolved some enzymes which cut the viral genome into fragments, destroying it, right? So those enzymes which are produced by bacteria for cutting viral genome, those enzymes are known as restriction enzymes. Scientists have obtained approximately 3,000 such restriction enzymes so far. Restriction enzymes from bacteria. Scientists have so far obtained 3,000 such restriction enzymes from bacteria. And out of these 3,000 restriction enzymes, which have been obtained from bacteria, 600 restriction enzymes are now commercially available. They are sold to the different laboratories, which use them for DNA fingerprinting, right? So far, 3,000 restriction enzymes have been obtained from different strains of bacteria, and 600 such restriction enzymes are commercially available. They are used by the labs for cutting this DNA, right? So this cutting of huge DNA, large DNA strands, into small manageable fragments by the help of these restriction enzymes, this process is known as restriction digestion. Do you now understand what is restriction digestion? So we have to compare the DNA. But this DNA is long, it is very lengthy DNA. We cannot handle it easily. So for that purpose, these forensic scientists, they cut this DNA into small manageable fragments. They cut it into small pieces. So how do they cut this DNA into small pieces? They do not use tailoring scissors, they use molecular scissors. What are these molecular scissors? These molecular scissors are restriction endonucleases. Where from they get these restriction endonucleases? These restriction endonucleases, they are obtained from bacteria. So far, 3,000 restriction enzymes have been obtained from bacteria. And out of these 3,000 restriction enzymes, 600 restriction enzymes are commercially available. So by the help of these restriction enzymes, restriction endonucleases, this lengthy DNA, it is cut into small manageable fragments. This process of cutting this long DNA into small manageable fragments by the help of restriction enzymes, this is known as restriction digestion. So after obtaining the sample, this sample is said it is cut into small manageable fragments by restriction enzymes known as restriction digestion, right? So after restriction digestion, now we have got small manageable fragments of DNA. What is done after that? Now these small manageable fragments, they are sorted according to their length. Now scientists, when they cut the DNA into small fragments, now these small fragments, some of the fragments are very small, some of the fragments are large. So they need to sort out these small fragments of different length. So for that purpose, after restriction digestion, they go for gel electrophoresis. They go for gel electrophoresis. So what is gel electrophoresis? They put these small DNA fragments now into a electrophoresis tray, which is filled with agarose polymer gel. Then they apply electric current across the two electrodes of this electrophoresis tray. DNA itself being negatively charged, it gets attracted towards the positively charged electrode. So those DNA fragments which are small, they move faster. Those DNA fragments which are larger, they move slowly. So when the electric current is applied, smaller fragments move faster, larger fragments they lag behind, and in this way, fragments of different lengths, they get sorted out. Smaller fragments will go ahead, larger fragments will lag behind, and the intermediate size fragments, they will remain in the middle, right? So by the help of this gel electrophoresis, now scientists can separate these DNA fragments of different lengths. They can separate these DNA fragments of different lengths. So this technique is known as gel electrophoresis. This technique is known as gel electrophoresis. So gel electrophoresis is used for separating, segregating DNA fragments of different lengths. Smaller fragments are separated out from the larger fragments. So for that purpose, they need an electrophoresis tray. This is an electrophoresis tray. It is a tray. This tray is fitted with two electrodes. A negative electrode. This is one electrode, this is another electrode. On one side, they give the electric current. This is the negative, this is the positive electrode, right? This tray has got small vents in it, small depressions in it. These small depressions or pits, they are known as the vents. These are the vents in the electrophoresis tray. DNA is put into these vents. This restriction digested DNA, it is kept in these vents. It is dropped in these vents. When we cut the DNA into small fragments, those small fragments of DNA are together put into these vents. Then this tray is filled with an agarose polymer gel. This tray is filled with an agarose polymer gel. This is gel agarose. Gel agarose. This agarose polymer gel, it is porous. Through this gel, the DNA fragments can move, right? So after restriction digestion, now DNA is put into these depressions of the tray. These depressions of the tray, they are known as vents. DNA is kept into these vents. The tray is filled with agarose polymer gel. After filling the tray with agarose polymer gel, now electric current is applied across two electrodes. The negative current and the positive, that means the neutral and the phase, are connected like this. So this positively charged, the phase which is positively charged, it is known as anode. And this is the cathode. So as electric current is applied, here we have positive charge, here we have negative charge. So this DNA starts moving towards the positive charged electrode, because DNA itself is negatively charged. DNA itself is negatively charged. So it starts traveling towards this positively charged electrode. It starts traveling towards this positively charged electrode. What happens in this travel? The smaller fragments, because they are small, they move faster. They move faster. Whereas the large fragments, being larger in size, they move slowly. So in this way, DNA fragments of different lengths, they are separated from each other. I hope you are getting me. After restriction digestion, DNA is cut into small fragments of different lengths. Those small fragments of different lengths, they are together put into the vents of this electrophoresis tray. Then this tray is filled with agarose polymer gel, which provides the medium through which the DNA will move. Then electric current is applied. One electrode is made negative, another electrode is made positive. As the electric current is applied, negatively charged DNA, this DNA, it is negatively charged. This DNA itself is negatively charged. This negatively charged DNA, it starts moving towards this positive electrode. As the DNA is being attracted towards the positive electrode, which fragments will move faster? Those fragments which are smaller in size, they travel faster through the agarose polymer gel. Those fragments of DNA which are larger in size, which are longer in size, they lag behind. So in this way, fragments of different sizes, they are separated from each other. This separation of fragments of different sizes from each other by passing electric current through this agarose polymer gel, this technique is known as gel electrophoresis, right? So this helps the scientists to separate DNA fragments of different lengths. They separate out shorter fragments, they separate out longer fragments, they separate out fragments of intermediate size, right? So this technique is known as gel electrophoresis technique. After the fragments of different lengths have been separated out, these fragments, they are so far double-stranded. You know, our DNA is naturally double-stranded. You know, our DNA is naturally double-stranded. So these fragments are also double-stranded. So scientists, in order to preserve this DNA, they break these double-stranded fragments into single-stranded fragments. How? Double-stranded DNA fragments are now converted into single-stranded DNA fragments. How? So they give it an alkali treatment. Alkali treatment. They add sodium hydroxide to this tray. This alkali, it breaks the bonds between the two strands of the DNA. Suppose this is a DNA fragment. It has hydrogen bonds between it is nitrogenous bases. It has hydrogen bonds between its nitrogenous bases. When alkali is added to this DNA, This alkali, it breaks these hydrogen bonds between the two strands of DNA. I will make it a bit larger. These are the hydrogen bonds between nitrogenous bases. They are the hydrogen bonds between nitrogenous bases. So this alkali, it breaks these hydrogen bonds. It breaks these hydrogen bonds. So when hydrogen bonds are broken between the two strands, the two strands of DNA, they get separated from each other, and we obtain single-stranded DNA molecule. So this process of breaking hydrogen bonds to convert double-stranded DNA fragments into single-stranded fragments, this is known as denaturation. So this DNA is denaturated by alkali treatment, so that double-stranded DNA molecules are converted into single-stranded DNA fragments. This follows the gel electrophoresis. So first we took the DNA sample, we cut it into smaller fragments by a technique known as restriction digestion. After restriction digestion, we separated out DNA fragments of different lengths by gel electrophoresis technique. Now each fragment is a double-stranded fragment. So we have to convert these double-stranded DNA fragments into single-stranded fragments. So how we do this? We do this by alkali treatment, or we can also do it by heat treatment. Mostly the alkali treatment is used, right? So when alkali is added to this DNA, alkali breaks the hydrogen bonds between the two DNA strands. When the hydrogen bonds are broken, the two DNA strands, they separate from each other, and double-stranded DNA fragments, they are now changed into single-stranded DNA fragments. This process is known as denaturation. After separating the two strands from each other by alkali treatment, now this DNA, it is subject to southern blotting. So what is southern blotting? Southern blotting is a technique of preservation of DNA permanently onto nitrocellulose paper. If we keep this DNA in the tray, it will degrade, it will get destroyed. In order to permanently save this DNA, we have to transfer it onto a nitrocellulose paper where it will remain preserved. So this technique was developed by a scientist known as Southern. So for that reason, it is known as Southern blotting. So what is done in Southern blotting? A nitrocellulose paper sheet. A nitrocellulose paper sheet or a nylon sheet, which is positively charged. It is put on to this DNA. This nitrocellulose paper sheet or positively charged nylon sheet. It is put onto this DNA, right? DNA being negatively charged, nitrocellulose paper being positively charged, attracts the negatively charged DNA towards itself. And this negatively charged DNA, it sticks to the nitrocellulose paper, which is positively charged. Do you follow me? What is the basic principle of this technique? So they make the nitrocellulose paper positively charged. DNA itself is negatively charged, right? So when they put this positively charged nitrocellulose paper over the DNA, which is negatively charged, this negatively charged DNA, it gets attracted to the positively charged nitrocellulose paper, and it gets fixed to it. Then they add a lots of blotting papers on above the nitrocellulose paper. They put a large number of blotting papers on the nitrocellulose paper. Blotting paper is a porous paper which has the ability to soak up the fluid. So this gel agarose, it is soaked up by the blotting papers. So that helps the DNA to come in contact with the nitrocellulose paper. This DNA, it was in agarose polymer, this gel. So we have to fix this DNA on the nitrocellulose paper. Although the DNA itself is negatively charged, nitrocellulose paper is positively charged, it will attract the DNA. But to facilitate this, we also put a large number of blotting papers on this nitrocellulose paper. Blotting papers, they soak up the nitrocellulose gel, they soak up the fluid, right? So that brings DNA closer to the nitrocellulose paper and gets stuck to it, right? So this technique is known as Southern blotting technique. This technique is known as Southern blotting technique. Now we have all this DNA on our nitrocellulose paper by Southern blotting technique, right? So after Southern blotting technique, they have to add the probe DNA. They add probe DNA to find a particular sequence that they are looking for. I will summarize it later on. After Southern blotting, now they have to find a specific sequence. Suppose they have to look for GATA sequence in this DNA. Scientists, forensic scientists, they have to compare the DNA. So they have targeted the GATA sequence. They have to look where the GATA sequence is present in this DNA, right? Which fragments of this DNA contain GATA sequence. So how they will come to know where the GATA sequence is? They cannot see it through their naked eyes. They cannot see it, this GATA sequence, through any microscope. They have to locate it by some special technique. So what they do, they make a probe DNA. They make a probe DNA. So this, what is this probe DNA? It is a synthetic stretch of DNA. Synthetic stretch of DNA. Stretch of single-stranded DNA. It is a synthetic single stretch of DNA of known base sequence, or we can say of known or of complementary base sequence to GATA, right? If they are looking for GATA, they have to make a synthetic DNA which is complementary to this GATA sequence. So they will make a stretch of DNA. They synthesize the DNA in the laboratory. So they have to make it complementary to the GATA sequence. So what will be opposite to G? It will be C. What will be opposite to A? It will be T. What will be opposite to T? It will be A. What will be opposite to A? It will be T. So they synthesize a small stretch of DNA of the known sequence. If they are looking for GATA, they will synthesize this DNA segment in the laboratory, having sequence CTAT, which is complementary to this GATA sequence. While making this synthetic DNA, they add radioactive phosphorus to it. You know, 32 isotope they use. You know, when they are making the DNA, when they are synthesizing the DNA in the laboratory, how they can synthesize this DNA? They will take a nitrogenous base, cytosine, they will combine it with a deoxyribose sugar, and then they will combine it with a phosphate group, phosphoric acid molecule, H3PO4. But that phosphorus is made radioactive. They take the radioactive phosphate, right? They take phosphorus 32 isotope. So when they will combine nitrogenous base plus pentose sugar plus phosphoric acid, right? They will make a nucleotide. They will make a nucleotide. So they make first cytidine nucleotide, then thymidine nucleotide, adenine nucleotide, thymidine nucleotide. They join these nucleotides together in the laboratory, and they form this small stretch of DNA, single-stranded DNA. This is known as the probe DNA. This is known as the probe DNA. And this probe DNA, it is complementary to the sequence which these forensic scientists are looking for. Which these forensic scientists are looking for. They are looking for the GATA sequences in this DNA. they have to locate where these GATA sequences are present in this DNA, right? So they add this synthetic DNA of known sequence of complementary sequence to GATA, having radioactive phosphorus in it, right? Now they add this synthetic DNA to this nitrocellulose paper, to this nitrocellulose paper. What is contained in on this nitrocellulose paper? On the nitrocellulose paper, we have DNA which we have taken as a sample, right? We have sample DNA. This DNA is in the form of small fragments of different lengths and they are single stranded, right? On the nitrocellulose paper, DNA is single stranded because we have converted this double stranded DNA into single stranded by alkali treatment, right? So when they add this probe DNA to the nitrocellulose paper, wherever there is GATA sequence on the in this sample DNA, wherever there is GATA sequence in the sample DNA, this probe DNA will bind to that GATA sequence, right? Why this probe DNA will bind to GATA sequence? Because it has got a complementary sequence to GATA. Are you understanding what I am saying? On the nitrocellulose paper, we had sample DNA in the form of single strands, right? These forensic scientists, they are looking for a specific sequence. They are trying to locate the GATA sequences in this sample DNA. So how they will locate these GATA sequences? They cannot see them by their eyes. They cannot see them by microscope. So they have to identify them chemically. So for solving this problem, they developed probe DNA. This probe DNA, it is a small stretch of DNA of known base sequences, right? Of complementary base sequences to GATA. But they make this small stretch of DNA, which is complementary to GATA, they make it radioactive. They have used phosphorus 32 radioactive isotope, right? So when this is added to nitrocellulose paper, when they add this to the nitrocellulose paper, this complementary probe DNA, it binds to GATA sequence wherever it is present on this nitrocellulose paper. The DNA which is present on the nitrocellulose paper is single stranded. So when they add this probe DNA binds to those DNA molecules which have the GATA sequence on them. I will try to show you it in diagram. I will try to make it clear to a diagram. Suppose this is our nitrocellulose paper, where we have got the DNA. This DNA is in the form of single strands. We have cut into it into single strands. Suppose this strand has got GATA sequence on it. This strand has got GATA sequence on it. This strand has got GATA sequence on it, right? We want to know where these GATA sequences are. Since we cannot see them by our eyes, we cannot visualize them under microscope. So how we can know where GATA sequence? So these scientists, they make complementary DNA or probe DNA. They have synthesized probe DNA in the laboratory. This probe DNA has got complementary sequence of GATA sequence. There, it has got opposite sequence of GATA. So it has got C, T, A, T sequence. And it has got phosphorus 32 radioactive isotope. So when these four base pairs are combined, when these four bases are combined, these four nucleotides are combined, it forms a small DNA fragment. Now they add this DNA to this nitrocellulose paper. When these small stretches of DNA are added to the nitrocellulose paper, where they will bind? They will bind only on those places where they have the complementary base sequence. So this DNA will bind here because C will bind to G opposite to G, T will bind opposite to A will bind opposite to T, and T will bind opposite to A, right? So here the DNA will be hybridized. DNA will be here hybridized. So single stranded DNA on these locations will be again converted into double stranded. Single stranded DNA will be again converted into double stranded DNA on nitrocellulose paper. Only on those places where the GATA sequence is present, right? So this is known as hybridization. This is known as hybridization by adding the probe DNA. So on this nitrocellulose paper now we have again formed the double stranded DNA, but only on those locations where the GATA sequence was present, right? So after this hybridization, they washed this nitrocellulose paper. They washed this nitrocellulose paper because they had added so many fragments of this complementary DNA. Suppose only 3 pieces bound to this nitrocellulose paper. The remaining DNA that is washed off by water. So when they put water on it, that DNA which has not bound to the DNA fixed on nitrocellulose paper, that will be washed off by the water, right? So after that, now they have to locate where the DNA hybridized. After that, they have to locate where the DNA hybridized. Again, this cannot be seen by the eyes. This cannot be seen through any microscope, right? So again, they have to use a technique. So for locating where the Gata secans was present, they expose this nitrocellulose paper over an X-ray film. They take an X-ray film and put it on this nitrocellulose paper. You know, in old cameras, we used that film, photosensitive film. Those cameras, they had a shutter. When we clicked the shutter, light entered through the aperture and it fell onto the film, exposing the film only on those parts where the light fell on it, right? Then the film was developed and we got the photograph. Similarly, what happens here, when they put X-ray film on this nitrocellulose paper, this radioactive DNA, it emits radiation. It emits radiation. Those radiations, they expose the film on those areas, in these areas. So they put an X-ray film over the nitrocellulose paper. On the nitrocellulose paper, there are some stretches of DNA having radioactivity. Those radioactive stretches of DNA, they emit radiation. And because of that radiation, the film gets exposed in these parts, right? So after putting the X-ray film on this nitrocellulose paper, this is X-ray film. After putting it on the nitrocellulose paper, then this X-ray film is removed and it is developed. And what we see after developing, we see on this X-ray film that there are certain regions where there are dark bands. The presence of dark bands, it indicates that in these regions, the Gata secans was present. So it makes a characteristic banding pattern. And this characteristic banding pattern, which is formed on this developed X-ray film, this becomes our DNA profile. When we look at the X-ray, we see that there are certain regions which are exposed. So they indicate the presence of bones. X-ray, we take X-ray of our skeleton. So most of the parts of the X-ray, they are dark. But wherever the light has struck the bones, where from the light has reflected back, those areas are lighter in color. And by those lighter areas, we visualize that there are the bones, right? There are the body organs. Similarly, when we develop this X-ray film, it develops characteristic banding pattern. This developed X-ray film with characteristic banding pattern on it, this is our DNA profile. So how we use it in solving the legal disputes or criminal cases? Suppose a crime had occurred at some place, right? Forensic scientists, they rush to that spot. They collect samples from there. They look for blood, they look for semen, they look for sputum, they look for any hair follicles. So if they get any blood or semen, they extract the DNA from it. Then that extracted DNA is subject to this whole process. They make a DNA profile from that sample. They keep this DNA profile with them. Then the police sets to look out for the suspects. Then the police makes investigation and police starts looking out for the suspects. Suppose police got 3-4 persons which are possible suspects. Police takes DNA sample from them. That sample is sent to the laboratory. And from those DNA samples, again the profiles are generated. Then the profile which was generated from the DNA, which was obtained from the crime scene, is matched with the suspect's DNA profile. If any suspect's DNA profile exactly matches with the profile which was obtained from the DNA which was taken from the crime scene, that is confirmed as the conflict. This is convict. That is the person is convicted, right? The person is identified as the culprit. Do you understand what I am saying? So first DNA is obtained from crime scene. From that DNA, a profile is generated. Then suspects are taken. Every suspect is taken for DNA fingerprinting. Sample is taken, and every suspect's profile is produced. Then these profiles are matched. The profile of the suspect, which matches with the profile of the DNA, which was obtained from the crime scene, indicates that this suspect is the actual criminal. He has made the crime, right? The others whose DNA profile does not match with this crime scene DNA profile, they are set free, right? So in this way, criminals can be caught by this DNA fingerprinting. Similarly, there are some paternity disputes. A couple is married, they produce a child. After some time, the father says that I'm not sure whether this child is mine or not, right? The father makes claim that I am not sure this child is mine. He suspects he makes suspicion over his wife, right? So a dispute arises. This dispute can be also solved by DNA fingerprinting. How? So they take a DNA sample from the father, they make a profile of it. They take a DNA sample from the offspring, they make a profile of it. You know, in the offspring, 23 chromosomes come from father, 23 chromosomes come from mother, right? If the son or the daughter, the offspring, is legitimate offspring of his father, then half of the DNA should match with his father, and half of the DNA should match with his or her mother. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So if a couple has a dispute, if the father claims that the offspring is not mine, so they will take DNA from the offspring, they will generate a profile. Then they will take the DNA of father, they will generate a profile. Since the offspring is product of their biological parents, right? If the offspring is legitimate, then half of the DNA sequence, they will match with the father's DNA, right? Half of the DNA, because father has contributed 23 chromosomes, mother has contributed 23 chromosomes. So half of the chromosomes should match with the father's DNA, right? If it happens, if it is proved by profiling that half of the DNA is matching with the father, then the offspring is legitimate. If the DNA is not matching, if half of the DNA is not matching with the father, half of the DNA will match with the mother. But if the next half of the DNA is not matching with the father, then it is clear that the father was right, the offspring is not legitimate. So in this way, it is used for solving paternity disputes. It is also used for solving paternity disputes. It may be used for solving criminal cases, right? So that is all how DNA profiling, how DNA fingerprinting is done. Should I summarize it again? Okay. So for generation of a DNA profile, what we have to do first? We have to take a DNA sample. For generation of a DNA profile, we have to take a DNA sample. What we do to that DNA sample? You have to remember these basic points. I have simplified it for you. If you go through the textbooks or references, you will get confused, right? So I have tried my best to make it the most simple. Although this technique is not that much simple. If it would have been so simple, then we all would have been DNA fingerprinting by ourselves. This is not so simple, but I have just tried to make it, I have just tried to simplify it. So we take a DNA sample. What we do to this DNA sample? We subject it to restriction, digestion. Now you know what is restriction digestion. We cut this long DNA into small manageable fragments. After restriction digestion, These fragments of different lengths, they are separated from each other by gel electrophoresis. By gel electrophoresis. Why we separate these fragments of different lengths from each other? So that we can easily handle them. So we can separate fragments of different lengths by gel electrophoresis. After gel electrophoresis, we change double-stranded DNA strands, double-stranded DNA fragments. We break double-stranded DNA fragments into single-stranded DNA fragments. How we break them into single-stranded DNA fragments? By alkali treatment. We treat it with sodium hydroxide, and double-stranded DNA fragments are converted into single-stranded DNA fragments. Then what we do next? After that, we fix this DNA to save it permanently. We fix this DNA on nitrocellulose paper. So we make use of southern blotting. We go for southern blotting. In this southern blotting, this DNA is permanently attached to nitrocellulose paper for preservation, right? After southern blotting, what is the next step? After southern blotting, we add probe DNA. We add probe DNA. So we add probe DNA for locating the sequence of base pairs which we are looking for. We are mostly looking for STRs, short tandem repeats, like GATA. So we add probe DNA so that this probe DNA can bind to GATA sequences wherever they are present in the sample DNA. After adding probe DNA, we wash this nitrocellulose film so that excess probe is removed. So that probe DNA, which has not bound, that is washed off, that is removed, right? After washing, we expose this DNA, this nitrocellulose paper, nitrocellulose film. We expose this nitrocellulose paper or film over X-ray film, over X-ray film. So when the probe DNA binds to nitrocellulose DNA, the DNA gets hybridized. After that, we expose it on X-ray film so that radioactivity, which is emitted by probe DNA, that makes spots, that makes marks on the X-ray film. Then we develop this X-ray film. When we develop this X-ray film, what we get? We get the DNA profile. We get the DNA profile, right? Then we compare the DNA profile which was made out of DNA, which was obtained from the crime scene, with the suspect's DNA. The suspect's DNA profile, which matches with the crime scene DNA profile, is that person is convicted. The suspect is then convicted. Those suspects whose DNA does not match, they are set free, right? So this is how we make DNA fingerprinting. So for DNA fingerprinting, we have to generate the DNA profile, and we have to compare those DNA profiles. Then only we can be sure whether the profile is matching or not. I think this is sufficient for today. I hope you have understood it. Thank you. Have you understood it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.